Hello everybody and welcome back to another edition of Slam Talk Sports. Of course I am Slam, yes I am Mr. Darcy Duncan. You know where to find me online. It is Slam Talk Sports on Instagram, Slam Talk Sports on TikTok, and soon it will be Slam Talk Sports on X and Twitter, where you can find my betting advice and my usual pontifications about the sporting world. But today is not the usual Slam Talk Sports show. No, it is not a Friday afternoon. I'm not talking about a huge week of AFL action. I'm not previewing the round ahead. I'll be doing that in the coming days. Of course, AFL finals will kick off this week, and it is one of the great weekends in sport. But the reason I'm here today, the reason you are my captive audience, is because the NFL is starting on Friday morning. Yes, America's game is finally back. I have fallen in love with this great sport over the course of the last 15 years. I think it was my introduction into fantasy football around 2012, around 2013, thanks to the good people over in my fantasy league who are now my good friends, and they were before that, but they're even better friends now. The likes of Tom Fenner, Jack Fenner, Matthew Hutchinson, Andrew Gallucci, just to name a few. They helped bring me aboard to fall in love with this great game. And the reason why I want to talk to you today is because here at Slam Talk Sports, there's a couple of things we love. We love fantasy. We love gambling. Yes, we do love that. We love finding an edge against the bookies. We love watching the sports, but boy oh boy, if there's a $5 same game multi on it, it just gets that much better. Gamble responsibly as always. I want to talk to you about a couple of NFL bets I don't mind for the upcoming 2025-26 NFL season. Now, we'll go through all the awards, your DPOYs, your MVPs, your Offensive Player of the Years. We'll get to that in a second. I want to start with the bets I really like, the ones I've researched, and the ones I think were a very realistic chance of winning some money on. These are the ones I have the most confidence in, and I think are a decent price to get a decent return if you were to put $50 or $100 down to get a couple of hundred back and say, wow, I enjoyed the sport. I really got invested in it. I watched all the games. I was listening along to Slam Talk Sports. I was watching Slam Talk Sports on YouTube right now. You should be watching this episode on YouTube because there will be a lot of bet slips popping up throughout the episode. I want you to get invested in this sport like I do because it is a bloody great game to watch. And how will we be invested? Well, firstly, let's start with my alternate wins multi. Now, on the TAB, you can find some decent odds for some very good teams to do the bare minimum, to win 9, 10, 11 games. Now, the over-unders, they are set over in America by the sports books, and we adopt most of them here on your sports bets, your Neds, your Lads. But I have found a slight market edge over at the TAB, a wonderful betting company. They're not paying me anything, but they've been a wonderful betting company to Slam Talk Sports here in 2025, and we're going to continue with them when it comes to the NFL. I want to talk about alternate wins. Let's start with the Baltimore Ravens. I think they will win 10-plus games with ease. That is $1.22. Now, Baltimore have hit this mark, and every season Lamar Jackson has been healthy. Lamar Jackson is one of the best players in football. He is the greatest dual-threat quarterback in the history of the game. He is usually a lock for 850-plus rushing yards, for 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, and last year he had 40 passing touchdowns. He had statistically the greatest season of his career. Now, he did not win the Super Bowl. He lost in the playoffs to the Buffalo Bills and the MVP last season in Josh Allen, who we'll get to in just a second. But I think Baltimore, 10-plus wins is a lay-down misère, as they say over in Paris. It will just happen as long as Lamar Jackson is healthy. And of course, the king is still on his throne. Mr. Derrick Henry in the backfield, the star running back for the Baltimore Ravens, should be good for 1,200 plus yards and 10 to 12 touchdowns. When you combine that with the fact the Cleveland Browns are in their division, one of the worst teams in football who should be tanking for the number 1 draft pick this year, that is 2 wins, in my opinion, off the bat without having to break a sweat. I think Baltimore, 10 wins at $1.22 is a lock. 11 wins at $1.40 is also a very nice bet. Move on to my next selection. It is the Buffalo Bills, led by last year's MVP in Josh Allen. Yes, Haley Steinfeld's partner. I mean, if you follow entertainment, you'd know that Haley's a 10. Okay, so naturally, Buffalo, I'll be giving them 10 wins as well at $1.16. Now, if you say slam, that's a bit short, okay? 10 wins for $1.16, I'm not that invested in it. Well, let's go up one. Let's go to 11, because I think Buffalo will win the AFC. I think they'll have the most wins in the AFC. Will they win the whole thing and get to the Super Bowl? I'm not so sure about that right now. But I think 10 wins, but even 11 plus wins at $1.40 is good odds for Buffalo. They play in their division. That is not great. I mean, New England won 3 games last year, my team, as I sit here wearing the Randy Moss jersey. Also, the Miami Dolphins, they could potentially be sacking their coach halfway through the year. They're not in a great position either. And the other team in that division is the New York Jets. Enough said. The New York Jets haven't been in a Super Bowl for like 50 years. They haven't made the playoffs in like 13 or 14 years. You see what I'm saying? The teams he's going to play against twice a year aren't really that good. So I think Buffalo for 11 plus wins, as you know, it goes without saying, they've got the MVP. They should be chalking that up. Another team I like is Denver. Now, Denver play in the AFC West. They will play against Patrick Mahomes and the Swifties twice a year. Kansas City have dominated this division for a long, long time. Since Patrick Mahomes became the starter, they've won the division every single season under Mahomes and their brilliant coach in Andy Reid. Having said all that, I think Denver are the team to watch this year. Their rookie quarterback last year in Bo Nix had a sterling year. Trying to minimize the turnovers, it was pretty good with his legs, in addition to Denver's elite defense and their strong offensive line. I think 8 or 9 plus wins for the Broncos, who were the 7th seed last year, is a very nice bet. As I just said, they have a nice offensive line. They drafted a running back in RJ Harvey, who I hope could have a similar impact to Alvin Kamara in his first season. Now, obviously, Kamara was an absolute freight train. He was Mick Jagger, okay? He was every member of AC/DC, and he was also singing lead vocals, despite the fact he was in a timeshare with Mark Ingram. That could all been gibberish to you if you don't know NFL, but all you need to know is that RJ Harvey should have a solid role. They've also got J.K. Dobbins, who's been pretty solid when he's been healthy in his career, in addition to their coach in Sean Payton, who won a Super Bowl, was it 20 years ago nearly now, with the New Orleans Saints. They have the DNA, they've got the players, they've got the Defensive Player of the Year last year in Patrick Surtain. They've got all you need if you want to go on a deep playoff run, in addition to the fact they play in Colorado. Now, in Colorado, as you've seen with the Denver Nuggets, as you've seen with the Denver Broncos, the altitude plays a factor. Denver should be a very good home team, and especially in the second halves of these games against teams that are traveling over to Denver, to Colorado, to that side of the country, it will be a test whether they have the staying power to win these games against this elite Denver team and this elite Denver defense. I'm big on the Broncos this year. I think 8, 9 plus wins at $1.30, $1.50 is a very nice bet. We move on to one that is a bit more risky. Now, everyone's on this team. Everyone thinks, God, I mean, with the trade they just made, with a very nice quarterback, with a gun running back, with a good offensive line, and a coach, a head coach, who wins 10 plus games just about every single year, that the Green Bay Packers should easily get 9 to 10 wins. I'm not sold. I'm not 100% sold the Packers win 10, 11 games, what people are purporting right now, only because their draw is very difficult. In the second half of the season, they have to play a who's who on the road. They've got to play Denver away. They've got to play Baltimore in Green Bay, but also they've got to play Detroit twice, who just won, 13, 14 games. They have to play maybe a surging Chicago Bears behind their new head coach in Ben Johnson and their number 1 draft pick quarterback from a season ago in Caleb Williams. Things won't be that easy for Green Bay, but I do see the talent there. I do think they have the right pieces in place to be that team that ascends from a 7 seed to potentially an NFC title appearance, similar to Denver, who were the 7 seed last year in the AFC. That is the right progression to go from to then get to a Super Bowl or to an AFC title game. I think similar to Green Bay, Denver will also take those steps, take those leaps to becoming an elite team. But I'm only putting them for 8 wins. 8 wins is $1.20 in this multi. only because how difficult their draw is in the back end of the year. And if they were to start slow, then 8 to 9 wins would actually be tough unless they were to get some big wins late in the year against high-quality opposition. They start the year at home against the Detroit Lions. Now, must-wins in week 1 aren't really a thing, but geez, they got to beat Detroit, I think, if they want to get up to a hot start, because then they also play Dallas away in week 4. They play the Browns away in week 3, which should be a win, but I'd rather play the Browns at the end of the year when they're potentially tanking than in round 3 behind, because obviously they've got a great coach in Kevin Stefanski. They've still got an okay offensive line. They've got a lot of questions, the Browns. I think they're probably the worst team in football, but I'd rather play them at the end of the year than I would in week 3. And of course, they've got Washington in week 2 as well. It is a very tough road for Green Bay, but I do think they are slowly and quietly ascending. It hasn't been a noisy offseason for them. They've added a star player in Micah Parsons, one of the best defensive players in the league. So I think 8 to 9 wins for Green Bay is still a decent bet at $1.20 or $1.40. Next team I want to discuss is the world champions. I say world champions. Well, I don't think anyone would beat Philadelphia Eagles in a game of American football. I think they'll win 10-plus games quite easily. They've done that the last 3 seasons. I mean, last year, they were the second best team in the NFC. They were absolutely dominant. Well, they win 12, 13 games in the end, only behind Detroit. The year before that, they started 10-1. Obviously, they finished at 11-5. I think 11-5 or 11-6 in the end, because they really created in the back half of their season after being so dominant to start. They beat KC, they beat Buffalo, but they got shaky towards the end of the season, a bit like Collingwood this year. They couldn't finish off the season. They were out straight away in the playoffs. Year before that, they made the Super Bowl. So 10-plus wins for Philadelphia, which is the best team in football, which has the best offensive line, which has probably the best running back in football, and a star quarterback in Jalen Hurts, and 2 star receivers in Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. I think 10-plus wins for them is pretty much a lock, barring the health of their gun quarterback. And then finally, I like Tampa Bay to win 9-plus games. Now, Tampa Bay last year, they won the division. They're playing in a pretty poor division against the New Orleans Saints, against potentially a resurgent Atlanta Falcons, and against a porous Carolina Panthers side. Tampa have a tougher schedule than last year, but I do think they will get hot. Their run home is pretty light for a team that's made the playoffs the last 2 seasons. It is a tough start to the year, but if they're able to get through that and not lose too many games, then 9-plus should be within their grasp. They lost their offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen. However, they still have a very good head coach in Todd Bowles, who has won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator under Bruce Arians when the Tom Brady-led Buccaneers won the title a couple of years back. I think with the way Baker Mayfield has been playing of late, with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin coming back off IR, potentially by week 5 or 6, and Emeka Egbuka, who they picked up in this year's draft, and Bucky Irving, who's one of the best running backs in football after last year's exploits, I really do think 8 to 9 wins to Tampa Bay should be quite easy, considering how their division is one of the worst in football. 9-plus wins is $1.50. Now, if you were to add all those up, Baltimore, Buffalo, Denver, Green Bay, Philadelphia, and Tampa Bay, you would get about $4.50 on the TAB. I think that is a very sound bet. It allows for some of these teams to have an off game. It allows for their quarterback to miss 2 or 3 games, and they can still cover those lines. That would be my best season wins bet for 2025. Let's move forward to another one I don't mind. It is another season wins bet, but it is the underdog multi. It is 3 teams I think should surpass expectations and really improve on what was a poor 2024 season. I start with a very, very biased homer pick. It is the New England Patriots to win 8-plus games. Now, New England won 3 games last year. 8 wins is $1.45. You might think that's pretty light. They're going to double their wins. That's only $1.45. Well, I'll tell you why. They've added a gun head coach, in my opinion, in Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, the former head coach of the Tennessee Titans, achieved great things in Tennessee with a supporting cast that isn't quite up to scratch with today's NFL standards. They had Ryan Tannehill starting under center as their quarterback, a man who was thrown out from the Miami Dolphins. It ended up being a gun for the Tennessee Titans. They also had Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in the history of football. And they also had A.J. Brown for periods, who is now a star on the Philadelphia Eagles. But outside those three big players on offense, they didn't have a lot. And Mike Vrabel managed to take them to the number one seed in the AFC. He managed to win playoff games in the AFC against the likes of Lamar Jackson. So I think in New England, with Drake May, with their defensive assets they have in Barmore and Gonzalez, and most importantly, with a very light schedule, because they were so diabolically bad last year, that they can win 8+ games. Also don't mind Chicago to win 7+ games. Now, Chicago won 5 last year with their rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. I think they'll improve on that. And the reason why is because Matt Eberflus is no longer their head coach. Yes, Eberflus was a disaster last year. How often did he let the clock run out and just do nothing? How often did he just let Caleb Williams get lit up by his offensive line and make no adjustments and just stand there like, oh no, it happened again. Oh, probably should do something, but I won't. And he got sacked because against, was it the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, he had multiple timeouts and didn't use any of them and just watched the clock evaporate. And then slowly his career evaporated as he was promptly sacked by the Chicago Bears. Now the Bears have Ben Johnson, who was the most sought-after head coaching candidate last offseason. He was the former play caller and offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions. He was the big money move of the last offseason. Him and Mike Vrabel, of course, but I think Chicago, with their talent in DJ Moore, with the new draftee in Luther Burden, and last year's top 10 pick in Rome Odunze, they've got the caliber, they've got the talent, they've got the supporting cast that Ben Johnson needs to elevate this team from 5 wins. I think 7 wins is well within their grasp. They have a bottom place schedule because, of course, they were crap last year. Now, they started okay last year, despite the fact their coaching was abhorrent. They started okay before the Hail Mary delivered by Jaden Daniels and caught by Noah Brown ultimately triggered a 10-game losing streak for the Chicago Bears. That won't happen again this year, at least I hope not. I think 7+ wins is very realistic at $1.40. I don't mind it. And finally, the New York Giants, the G-Men. I like the G-Men to win 4+ games this year. That's only $1.30. They won 3 last year. Their quarterback play was disgusting. Daniel Jones was thrown out of town after how poorly he played for the Giants last season. They have added Abdul Carter, who should be the clear favourite for the Defensive Rookie of the Year, a great pass rusher from Penn State. Should be playing for the Patriots if we didn't fuck up the last week of the season. Thank you very much, Gerard Mayo. I think the Giants 4+ wins with their strong defensive line and, of course, their star receiver in Malik Nabers should be 4 wins. It should be 4 wins unless this team absolutely craters. Russell Wilson as a stinker. Jackson Dart, their rookie QB, also comes in and sucks. Brian Dable gets sacked. Unless all those things happen, they're going to win 4 games. There's too much talent on this team, especially against teams that are the lower ends of the NFL table. I reckon they're going to get results this year, particularly in New York. That pass rush, that defensive line, going to be getting pressure against some weaker offensive units. I think the Giants 4+ wins is a very nice play. So if you put those together, New England, Chicago, and the Giants, that's about $2.20 for the underdog multi. Not great odds, but I think very realistic. Let's move forward to another bet I've cooked up. Don't worry, I've got plenty of these in my pocket. It is the QB Fatal 4-Way, as I'm calling it right now. There's 4 quarterbacks I like to sling the ball for this season. We start with Caleb Williams. I'm doubling up on the Bears here. Caleb is $1.65 to have 3,500 passing yards. Now, he's eclipsed this mark last season. He now has Ben Johnson calling the plays and plenty of weapons with his offensive unit, and he has added Joe Thuney as his left tackle, one of the best left tackles in football over the last 10 years. Now, he's been protecting Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Caleb Williams isn't quite at that level, but I do think with the extra time he's able to buy himself after last season's offensive line disasters, that 3,500 yards is very, very doable for Caleb Williams. I also don't mind Jared Goff for 3,500 yards. Now, Goff has lost 2 starting offensive linemen and Frank Ragnow. Was it Kevin Zeitler? Is his name Zeitler? If I pronounced that correctly. I don't think that'll affect him too much. Maybe in the early days, some protection issues. But realistically, Goff has thrown for 4,000 yards pretty much every year over the last 7 years. The only year he was below 3,500 was the year he missed multiple games, and it was his first year at the Detroit Lions since he's had Dan Campbell at the top of his game, since he's had a better offensive line. You add in St. Brown, you add in J-Mo Williams, you add in their new rookie, was it Tesla, who could be catching some passes this year, and Sam Laporta, and Jahmyr Gibbs. There's too much talent on this team. Now, they played 14 games in a dome last year out of 17, which is remarkable. I mean, climate controlled conditions, that's great for a quarterback. He still has 10 games in a dome this year. He won't quite get the 4,000 or 4,100 yards, but 3,500, $1.40, I still think is good odds for Jared Goff. This is a man who doesn't run the ball. Caleb Williams doesn't run it much either. These men are going to be slinging it from under center and behind, hopefully, some decent offensive lines. Next one I've got is Brock Purdy. Now, Brock Purdy is $1.40 to have 3,500 passing yards. Oh, he's got some talent to throw to. He's got Ricky Pearsall, who was a top pick last season. He's got Juwan Jennings, who's got a slight calf injury at the moment, but he should be healthy come the season opener. He also has all-world tight end in George Kittle, and of course the great Christian McCaffrey, who formerly had a 1,000-yard receiving season. He's got plenty to throw to Brock Purdy. He also has Kyle Shanahan as his coach, one of the best offensive play callers in the NFL, and a decent offensive line anchored by Trent Williams, one of the best left tackles in football. I think Brock Purdy is going to sling it this year. 3,500 yards is very doable. And finally, there's one more man for our QB fatal four-way. It is Baker Mayfield. 3,500 yards, also $1.40 in his time in Tampa Bay. He's gone 4,000. He has slung the rock in the warm, sunny conditions of Florida. He also plays in a dome against New Orleans in one of his away divisional matchups and against Atlanta in an away divisional matchup. Now, he's offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen. Duval.
Jacksonville. The community. Duval.
He has left to go to Jacksonville, but I've done a bit of research. Liam Cohen was only the offensive coordinator for one season. It's not going to have too much of an impact on Baker, I don't think. Now, losing your coordinator who then becomes a head coach is harmful. Is it disasterful? Is that a word? Is it disastrous? That is a word. I don't think so. Their passing game coordinator is now their offensive coordinator. So that shouldn't be a massive drop-off. He knows the scheme, he knows the system, he knows the players. So I still think Baker for 3,500 is a pretty decent bet. Those four quarterbacks in my fatal four-way is about $4.30. Another short odds bet, but one I think is very likely to happen, barring injuries. Okay, let's move on to the awards. These are all singles, everybody. These are your big awards for 2025. We start with the offensive rookie in the year. I'm all over Cam Ward. He is the second favorite. He is $4. The reason why I like Cam Ward is this is a quarterback award. Now, Ashton Genty is currently the favorite in the offensive rookie of the year market at $3.50. We expect him to have a very strong year. He should have 300 plus touches, potentially 10 plus touchdowns in a Las Vegas team which will want to run the ball, considering the draft capital they invested in Ashton Genty. Having said all that, it is a quarterback's award. A couple of years ago, CJ Stroud had a great rookie season. Despite the fact there were some great wide receivers putting up numbers, he won. Last year, it was Jaden Daniels, who had a fantastic rookie season, one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time. But also, at the same time, we had Malik Neighbors having 100-plus catches, 1,000-plus yards, one of the greatest rookie wide receiver seasons ever, and it still wasn't even a contest. Jaden Daniels won the award. Cast your mind back to the likes of Baker Mayfield, who had 20-something touchdowns. Now, I'm sure there was some great skill position seasons at the same time, but he won the award. If there's a quarterback playing at a high level, or at least a decent level, for what is a trash bag team from the year before, they will win the award. You know why? Because it's so much harder to play quarterback than any other position. Therefore, Cam Ward at $4 I still think is a decent bet. There's no other rookie quarterback that I can see, if you look at the odds right now, who could win this award. Now, Jackson Dart, yes, he's about $26. Only way he could win is if he's playing by week 3. If he misses the first 5 weeks and Cam Ward's putting up numbers in those 5 weeks, then it's going to be very, very hard for Dart to make a comeback because we don't expect the Giants to be playing in the playoffs. We don't expect them to win 8, 9, 10 games. Cam Ward is playing on a bad team, but he has the confidence of the people around him. They're raving about him in the preseason. I think Cam Ward $4 is one for your multis if you're doing an awards multi. Only one I would have as an outsider is RJ Harvey, who I mentioned before, playing for the Denver Broncos. He could step into a large role, a pass-catching role. He's $26. I wouldn't be putting too much on him, but he's one I don't mind at an outside price, considering Denver should be a 9 to 10 plus win team. They've got a good offensive line, and they're going to be playing on prime time a fair bit, I think, in the back end of the year, if they are to prove they are a threat to be reckoned with in the AFC West. Let's move forward to the defensive rookie of the year. A couple of selections I don't mind. This is probably the toughest one for me. I'm not an expert on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not an expert on any side of the ball, but I do find defense the hardest to predict. There's 2 names I've circled right here. His name is Jahdae Barron. He's $23. We'll be playing in the secondary for the Denver Broncos. It's a very strong secondary. He could get tackles, interceptions, maybe the occasional sack. He's playing next to Patrick Surtain in a very strong Denver defense. I think Barron could go very well at $23. The other one I want to mention is Shamar Stewart. Now, Shamar had a very weird offseason. He was the last first-round pick to sign with his team, the Cincinnati Bengals. But we do know the Bengals are a terrible defense, and they could really use the impact of Shamar Stewart. If he's able to jump off the screen, potentially get a few sacks, big highlight plays, lead Cincinnati to a couple of wins in which Joe Burrow throws for 50,000 yards, but he does a few nice things on defense, then he could get the attention of the voters. At $23, I don't think he's a bad bet. The favourite in this is Abdul Carter, and deservedly so. He's $3.60. I just think that is too short for this award, especially when names tend to pop up 3-4 weeks into the season. I'll be betting around the value of Jahdae Barron, I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry to Mr. Barron, and Shamar Stewart, both at $23. Let's look at the comeback player of the year. An incredibly tough award to predict. It usually goes to someone that has an outstanding offensive season, usually a quarterback as well. It was only a couple of years ago that we had Joe Flacco appear from out of nowhere and have this fantastic season where he led the Cleveland Browns back to the playoffs, and he won the comeback player of the year over Damar Hamlin, who literally died on a football field, if you weren't aware. A couple of years ago, Damar Hamlin, while playing safety for the Buffalo Bills, died on a football field against the Cincinnati Bengals, and they stopped the game. And they thought he was dead because he was dead. But then he came back to life. And then he played football the next year. And he didn't win comeback player of the year. How crazy is that? He died and came back. And it wasn't the best comeback. It was Joe Flacco throwing the ball for the Cleveland Browns, if you can believe it. Anyway, comeback player of the year. Having said all that, I think Aiden Hutchinson at $3.60 ain't a bad bet. He's had pretty much a sack in every game he's played for the last 20 games. He snapped his leg last year, which really, really hurt any chances Detroit had of winning the Super Bowl. So I don't mind Hutchie at $3.60. But again, it's not an award I'm looking to bet in on early in the season. Let's look forward to... Now, this award is new. I don't know how you're going to bet it, but based on the odds, I think we've got one that's massive overs. It is the Protector of the Year. It is coming this year to recognise great offensive line play. Now, the judges... Well, one of them's Jason Kelsey. So this is why I don't mind this selection. I don't mind Cam Jurgens at $91. I've been tipped this by my great friend Jin, who's also an Eagles supporter. He's come and said, Jurgens, he's going to be the Protector of the Year. What are you talking about? He's taken all the snaps. He's given the ball off to Hurts. I mean, come on. What else do you need to know? That was a sound argument for me. Okay, in addition to the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles are one of the best offensive lines in football, Cam Jurgens is coming off a Super Bowl as well, and the fact Jason Kelce is voting on this award, the man who's taught him everything he knew at the center position. Cam Jurgens at 100 to 1 ain't a bad bet, but in honesty, I have no idea what to do with this award because it's just been created, so therefore the criteria is a little bit sketchy. Move forward to the Coach of the Year award. Now, this is also a very tough one. There's a couple of coaches, I don't mind, at a decent price, and they're all proven coaches who have coached for many years and have won multiple playoff games. We start with Dan Campbell. Now, Dan Campbell, the coach of the Detroit Lions, one of the best coaches in football, he's $21 to win the Coach of the Year. I don't really understand why. He's just lost his offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson. He's just lost his defensive coordinator in Aaron Glenn. So therefore, there's a lot more pressure on Dan Campbell's shoulders to coach this team without two head coaches supporting him by his side. Having said all that, I still think Dan Campbell is a genius. He's a great offensive play caller. The Detroit Lions, I know, won so many games last year, but if they were to back it up at $21, I still think that's not a terrible bet. Now, for this award, it's usually subverting expectations. So, a couple of years ago, Kevin Stefanski won this award, despite the fact that he only won it 2 years beforehand, because he went into a season with no quarterback, and he ended up making the playoffs. Last year, the Coach of the Year was Kevin O'Connell. Sorry, guys, I look like an absolute noob. Kevin O'Connell from the Minnesota Vikings won it last year because his quarterback was Sam Darnold, and the expectation was that Sam Darnold would suck. Now, they lost their starter in Kirk Cousins to free agency. They picked up Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold won like 13 or 14 games, and it was an absolute triumph, and Kevin did a great job coaching him, and then he crumbled in the playoffs, which further added legitimacy to Kevin O'Connell being the Coach of the Year because his quarterback actually wasn't very good. So it's all about subverting what the expectations are for your team and your season, which is why Dan Campbell at $21 might not seem like a great bet, but people expect Detroit to fall back a little bit. If they stay at that same level, he's a chance to be Coach of the Year. Also, don't mind Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh? It's Harbaugh. Harbaugh. Yes, Baugh. Jim Harbaugh from the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, obviously, he was former coach of the San Francisco 49ers when they had some very good success over 10 years ago. They made the Super Bowl and made a couple of NFC title games. He's now in Los Angeles. His first year last year, they lost to the Houston Texans in the wild card round. But with Jim, he's always better in his second season, whether it was at San Francisco or it was in Michigan in the college world where he won a national title. Do I think Jim could potentially win 12, 13 games? He sure can. We know he's a great coach. At 20 to 1, I don't think it's the worst bet. Now, expectations. No one expects the Chargers to win the title. They just don't, especially after losing their star left tackle in Rashawn Slater in the preseason. I think that helps the narrative that Jim Harbaugh could win Coach of the Year because he's lost an all-pro level talent. Can he overcome that? That's how you win Coach of the Year. Last one I want to mention is Sean Payton. There's Sean Payton, last one Coach of the Year about 20 years ago. I think he's a gun coach. I think Denver are playing in a division with the prohibitive favourites in the AFC, in the Kansas City Chiefs. So if he was to win the AFC West, if he was to get a 1 or 2 seed in the AFC, then there's a huge chance that Sean Payton could be Coach of the Year. You know why? Because he's going to have to beat Patrick Mahomes at least once or twice during the home and away season or the regular season in order to win this award. And also because Bo Nix, his quarterback, isn't considered a top 12 quarterback. He doesn't have one of the gun quarterbacks. I mean, the 4 best quarterbacks are all in the AFC. And those are his opponents. It's Josh Allen, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Patrick Mahomes, who we haven't mentioned once 35 minutes into this podcast, and also it is Joe Burrow, the star quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals. He doesn't have any of those players, any of those great quarterbacks. So if he's able to overcome that and win, 12 to 13 games and also beat some of them in the home and away season, then I think he's a very realistic chance of winning the Coach of the Year. But it would require a great regular season record. Favourites are Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson. Now that makes sense because their team sucked last year. If they were able to take them back to the playoffs or even 10 plus wins, that would give them a big chance of winning Coach of the Year. But I'm just not sold on either team just yet. They should improve, But unless they're in the playoffs, then they won't be winning Coach of the Year. I mean, you have to reward winning, I think, when it comes to this sort of award, even though it's an impossible award to predict. So I'm going with the value for now. Let's go to the big ones. Let's go to Defensive Player of the Year. Now, the clear favourite is Micah Parsons. Now, I find that a bit strange. He just got traded from Dallas to Green Bay, but I understand why he is favourite, but not a prohibitive favourite. He's $5.50 on most books. Now, Micah's never won this award, which is why I think he's favourite, because the narrative would be he goes to Green Bay, he dominates, Dallas disrespected him. Finally, let's give him this award, Defensive Player of the Year, to show how great a player he is. But I'm not interested at $5.50 right now, considering he's dealing with a back injury and could be limited somewhat to start the season. I'm looking at someone like a Aiden Hutchinson at $8, or even a Nick Bosa at $13. It usually has to be someone from a playoff team, usually a decent playoff team, but not one that's too good. It's not going to be someone from some runaway brilliant offense. It's going to be from a balanced team that relies on a great defensive player. Now, you could say, well, San Fran, they're a great offensive team. They are, but are they a juggernaut this year? We're unsure. I mean, the health of CMC will always be questionable when it comes to San Francisco. Aiden Hutchinson, well, you'd say, oh, Detroit were a juggernaut last year. Will they be a juggernaut again? Will they be an offensive absolute monster? I'm not sure just yet. I know Hutchie nearly won this award through about 6 weeks last year before he snapped his leg. He was one of the favourites. I think he should be one of the favourites once again. And at big odds, I don't mind Kyle Hamilton from the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Kyle Hamilton is $51. He's one of the best safeties in the NFL. He should be playing for a very good team in the Baltimore Ravens and a very good defense. He's like $23 on Sportsbet. So $51 on the TAB seems a really good price. It's just the history of this award. It goes to pass rushers. So 10 of the last 13 winners have been pass rushers, or people that make those highlight plays where they sack the quarterback or they're able to get heaps of tackles for loss. There are only 3 winners outside these pass rushers have been Stephon Gilmore for the New England Patriots, which were all-time great defense that year until they crumbled just before the playoffs. Patrick Surtain last year for the Denver Broncos, who had a fantastic defensive season. And was Luke Kuechly all the way back, I think, 2013 for the Carolina Panthers. Now, Luke Kuechly was a star linebacker, but we haven't had many linebackers win this award. I mean, TJ Watt, is he a linebacker? Is he a defensive end? He's a whole bunch of things, all right? TJ Watt is an absolute star, but I wouldn't include him in this list of non-pass rushers. He's a great pass rusher. It's mainly been a pass rush award, which is why I don't mind Hutchinson and I don't mind Nick Bosa. They're better odds than Micah Parsons. Hutchinson and Parsons, similar odds, although I do think Hutchinson is going to have potentially better numbers if his leg is healed. And Nick Bosa has won this award before. If San Fran have a resurgent season, then I think he's going to be right up to his eyes for potentially to win this one. It's not an award I do like to bet in too much. I mean, if is it all things even, all things odd, all things even and all things odd? Well, all things odds, at least in this regard. I love Myles Garrett. The issue is he plays for a terrible team. They're going to win 3 or 4 games. Everyone knows Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in football, but his team sucks. So unless Cleveland were to somehow win 8 or 9 games and be in the conversation for a wild card, then I just don't see how he wins this award. Or he breaks the sack record. Like, he'd have to be so incredibly dominant defensively that his team performances are not really relevant to the award. I think they are relevant, so it's going to be hard for him to win it. But if Cleveland was somehow a surprise and he breaks every record, then Myles Garrett, fresh of a big contract extension or a big pay rise, as it was, is a chance to win this one. Let's go to the Offensive Player of the Year. Now, this is a wide open one. It's always really hard to predict this one. Last year, Saquon Barkley was the Offensive Player of the Year. We sit back now, that made a lot of sense, didn't it? He's playing well on the best offensive lines in football. He is one of the best running backs we've seen in a long, long time. He was dominant. A couple of years ago, we had Christian McCaffrey win the Offensive Player of the Year. Now, Christian McCaffrey was quite simply brilliant 2 years ago. Do I think he can get back to that level? I doubt it due to the injuries, but there's a recurring theme, as you can see. It's a running back award. Running backs win this award because they don't win MVP. This is the award for running backs to recognise and honour how important they are to the game and the gaudy statistical numbers they can put up. Last year, Jamar Chase was the Triple Crown winner for the Cincinnati Bengals. He had the most receiving yards, he had the most receptions, and he had the most touchdowns, and he still didn't win this award. It is a running back award. Having said all of that, who do I like to win the Offensive Player of the Year? I'll pull up the market right now. I think there's just juice all over this. Saquon Barkley is currently the favourite at $6.50. Jamar Chase is the clear second favourite at $7.50. How do you decide between all of them? This might seem like me having $50 each way, picking another Detroit Lions player, but I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs at $10 is a nice bet in what is a wide open field for the Offensive Player of the Year market. He's going to be getting so much of the ball down in Detroit. Now, I know I said I like Jared Goff to throw for a lot of yards, but I also like Jahmyr Gibbs to just be involved in everything. He's going to run it heaps. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to score heaps of touchdowns. He had heaps of touchdowns last year. I think Detroit are going to be not as good offensively as last year, but they may lean on Gibbs a little bit more. I think he's going to have 1,000 yards. I think Jared Goff's going to have 3,500 yards as well. I think everyone's sleeping on Detroit for some reason. This team was so good last year. Will they win all the one-score games? Probably not, but will they have a massive drop-off? I don't think so, because their defense will be better, and their defense is better. That gives them a better chance to run the football with Jahmyr Gibbs, potentially winning these games, grinding it out in the last quarter. Now, David Montgomery was often the first half grinder or the first quarter grinder. I see even more touches coming for Gibbs this season. At $10, I don't mind him, but you can bet around a couple of different names just because this market is so wide open. Who else don't I mind to have a pretty good offensive season? I'm looking at running backs right now. You guys tell me, is there another running back that could be the Offensive Player of the Year? Is Bucky Irving rogue? Is he too rogue at $23? He would need to have like 14 or 15 touchdowns at a minimum. He would need to catch the ball for probably 400, 500 yards and also be a 1,200-yard rusher. I don't hate him. I just don't think he's got the name value or the notoriety to win this award right now. Saquon Barkley was a multi-time Pro Bowler, okay? He was All-Pro, maybe, I think, in his first year. Christian McCaffrey was already one of the best running backs in football. I mean, it's a running back award, and I'm looking at the running backs who are going to have a lot of the ball, a lot of touches. I just know Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a heap of that footy. Also, Bijan Robinson at $10 is a very sneaky play to win the Offensive Player of the Year. It comes down to, you think, how good will the Atlanta Falcons be with their rookie quarterback from last year, Michael Penix, their sophomore quarterback, now in Michael Penix Jr., who will be 27 years old when this season is beginning. Do I trust the Atlanta Falcons? I don't quite trust them as much as the Detroit Lions. That's why my pick is Jahmyr Gibbs. Is that it? Is there one more pick left for the awards? Is it the MVP? Now, this will surprise you, everybody. There's usually 2 or 3 names we associate with the MVP, and it is always Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and last year it should have been Joe Burrow if his team played any sort of defense. Like even the slightest bit of pressure being put on the opposition offenses, he would win MVP. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Cincinnati were dog shit on the defensive side of the ball, despite the fact Joe Burrow threw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, and Jamar Chase had silly numbers catching the football. Despite all that, it needs to be a player from a team that's going to win a lot of games of football and put up some pretty silly offensive numbers. I'm going to give you someone at $21. You're going to say, Slam, he cannot win MVP, okay? He's not even the best offensive player on his team. And I'll say, you're an idiot. This guy is one of the stars of this game. He gets no credit. People just hate on him for no reason, despite the fact he's been in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, and he's thrown the house down in both of them. He's played beneficently in the biggest games of the year, and his team wins 12 games every single season. That their coach does an absolute meltdown and they don't have their security guard and Big Dom get thrown out with 5 games left in the year. I'm talking about you know who. His name is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is $21 to win the MVP this year. He should have won it a few years ago when Patrick Mahomes won, because Jalen missed the last few games of the season. Ultimately, Patrick got the better of him in the Super Bowl, but I do think it is now the time for Jalen to throw the ball a little bit more, to have 12 plus rushing touchdowns thanks to the tush push, and to cement his name in the greats of football. He is regarded as like the 9th or 10th best quarterback right now. I think Jalen Hurts is clearly the 5th or 6th best quarterback. What he does is hyper efficient. You can say his supporting cast is great. That's okay. Patrick Mahomes had Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill when he won MVPs, okay? Lamar Jackson has had some decent players when he's won MVP. Josh Allen, he didn't have any really great players last year. He had James Cook. I think the great talent around Jalen Hurts won't hurt him this year, provided Saquon Barkley doesn't go absolutely insane once again. If Saquon Barkley has a decent running back season, even misses a couple of games, then Jalen Hurts is right in position to be your MVP. You know why? He's going to win most likely the most games in the NFC. That holds him in good stead. He doesn't have to play against Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud. I can go on. He doesn't have to play against them every other week. So his numbers should be pretty good. Now, it comes down to the defense. Will Philadelphia's defense allow him to throw a little bit more? I do not know. But if they do, if Philly are in some tight games, they're in some closer games, then I think Jalen is a huge shout to an MVP at $21. Again, this is an award you can bet into later in the year. So often, do the odds flip with like 4 or 5 rounds left? It wasn't that long ago Dak Prescott was favourite for MVP. He came about 5th in the award voting, and only like a month of time had elapsed after that he was favourite. Things changed quickly, but for an opening season bet, for a pre-season prediction, I think Jalen Hurts at $21 is a very good bet for this year's MVP. That's it for all the awards predictions. I'll tell you the playoff teams I have in each conference, starting with the AFC. I think Buffalo will be your 1 seed. I think KC will be your 2 or your 3, swiftly followed by the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Houston Texans will win their division once again, the AFC South. I think Denver either going to be your 1 or 2 seed, or they'll be your 5 seed, because they're playing in the same division as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but they will definitely be in the playoffs, my Denver Broncos. I think the Chargers will just sneak in as well. They've still got a good head coach. They've got a good quarterback. They had one of the best defenses in the league last year, anchored by Khalil Mack and Derwin James Jr. I still like the Chargers. And finally, the 7th playoff team. This is the tough one. I've got 2. Right now, I'm not putting my New England Patriots in the playoffs. I'm putting the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Bengals would get it done. Their offense will be so good with Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow. I think they'll be good enough to get into the playoffs after last year's disappointment. That would be my only change. Usually you have 2 changes in each conference. I think the AFC is so strong with the elite quarterback play that I can't see 2 changes. I think Cincinnati come in. And who do I have missing out from last season? Who am I missing right there? Correct me, guys. We've got 3 teams from the AFC West. We've got KC. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers. We've got the Denver Broncos. Who am I missing? No. Miami didn't make playoffs last year, did they? No. Who am I missing from last year's playoffs? Give me 1 second, guys. As I quickly Google this, I'll give you my NFC playoff teams. It is kind of stock standard as well. I've got Philadelphia as my 1 seed. I've got the San Francisco 49ers returning to the playoffs with their soft draw. Now, it all depends on the health of Christian McCaffrey, but I do think they will be a force to be reckoned with if they can get their players right, which is always a big question in the NFL. Can you keep your players healthy? I think Detroit will be thereabouts again. I know, obviously, they've lost 2 head coaches. I mean, they've lost 2 head coaches, which happened to be their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator a season ago. But I still think they've got enough talent on their list to be competing this year. I've got Tampa winning their division once again. It is a soft division. I just think, the NFC South is not a good division. So I think Tampa should get to 9 or 10 wins. I've got the Rams as your wild cards. Again, it is health dependent. If Matthew Stafford is injured or showing signs of not being near his best with that back injury, they won't win 9 or 10 games. They will struggle. But the talent, Puka, Devontae Adams has been traded in there as well. You've got Kyron Williams. You've got a strong defense led by Jared Verse. I think the Rams, under the coaching of Sean McVay, one of the best coaches in the NFL, they should be around the mark. Washington, the Commanders, the former Redskins / Deadskins, they should also be a playoff team once again. Now, it was last year lightning in a bottle. Did everything just go right for Washington? Potentially, but I do know how good Jaden Daniels is. They've added Deebo Samuel. They have my man Bill. Yes, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is now their starting running back. Well, he's listed as the number 4 running back, but he should be the starter within 4 to 6 weeks. I think he's a talented player. And, of course, they have a brilliant wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, in addition to just how good Jaden Daniels is. Now, Jaden Daniels is a star of this competition. I think they're in the playoffs once again. Now, they're finally that 7 seed. That's a tough one. It's between Green Bay, Seattle and Atlanta for me. Considering I've just said Green Bay are going to win 8 games, I kind of have to give them my 7 seed, but I'm not as convinced they're going to be some runaway freight train Super Bowl contender like everybody else. Now, what did I get wrong here? Tell me, AFC playoff teams in 2024, who am I missed? Wait, Pittsburgh with a 6 seed? I'm so sorry, I've derailed this podcast. Pittsburgh with a 6 seed? Shows how good a coach Mike Tomlin is. But Pittsburgh, they won't be in the playoffs this year unless their defense is absolutely incredible. You know why? Because they've got a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and he is completely washed. That is why Pittsburgh will not be in the playoffs. Okay? Now, those are my predictions for this year's 2024-2025 NFL season. Finally, I'll give you one more. The Super Bowl. I had some success with this a couple of years ago. I predicted to Philadelphia to play against Kansas City in the Super Bowl. Was it 3 years ago at what, like 200 to 1? 300 to 1? Wowee, pat myself on the back. I don't quite have those odds this season, but there are a couple of teams that I like to play off in the big dance. We'll start with the AFC. I think it is the Bills or the Ravens' year. I think it has to be. KC have been up for so long. They've just played in 3 straight Super Bowls, but they will be missing their number 1 receiver, Rashee Rice, for 6 games. Has been suspended by the NFL. Now, last year, he suffered, well, it wasn't quite an ACL injury, but it was a significant knee injury, which cost him the majority of last season. Despite the fact they've had all these issues with the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they're going to be good this year. I just don't think they're going to be in the Super Bowl. I think that is time for the Bills or the Ravens. It is time for Josh Allen or for Lamar Jackson to finally get their chance to play off in the big game and potentially win it. Now, who will they be playing against? I'm going to have to say Philly. I'm going to have to say Philly because I know they are the best team. We can dance around the fact that they've got the best offensive line. They've got stars on defense. They've got the most loaded offensive cast of stars, skill position players, I think, in the league still. I can't go past them. Buffalo or Baltimore against Philly, you're still going to get 40 to 1. I think that's a pretty good bet. The only team I could see upsetting Philly is still the Detroit Lions because they have improved on defense. They've lost some coaching, we know that, but they are so talented on both sides of the football. I think Detroit is similar. It's just their time. They've been so close. They've been on the edge of competing for Super Bowl. Sorry, they've been competing for Super Bowl. They've been on the edge of playing a Super Bowl for the last few seasons. They won so many games last year before all the defensive injuries hit. I'm big on Detroit still. Detroit versus Buffalo, it's about 50 to 1. I think those are the matchups you'd be wanting to play around. If there's one that's just a big outsider, like a berserker, I think, how did this happen? How on earth have we got Denver versus Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl? That would be my big outsider bet. The odds on Denver versus Tampa Bay to play in the Super Bowl, as I'm looking right now on the exacta markets here on Sportsbet, or what do you reckon it is? I think it's going to be like 80 to 1, if I can find it. Denver versus Tampa Bay is 150 to 1. That is your $5 bet for this season, because I know both teams are so talented. They've both just slowly make the playoffs, win a playoff game, lose heartbreaking way in the playoff game. I can see them having the trajectory to play off in a Super Bowl. Obviously, some great teams are going to have to beat along the way, but they've both got quarterbacks I believe in. They've both got heaps of weapons on offense. They've both got decent offensive lines, and they both have head coaches who've won a Super Bowl as a head coach or as a coordinator. That matters to me. Having the experience and having the wherewithal and the composure to execute in the biggest games of the season. It is not a long season in the NFL, but health-wise, it become a very, very arduous task to be healthy when the big games matter. Now, if you don't get full health, you need great coaching, you need clear minds. So I trust Todd Bowles and I trust Sean Payton. Those are my predictions for the 2024-2025 NFL season. Hope you all enjoy them. Hope you'll get a couple of bets on before the season starts on Friday. And most importantly, everybody, just enjoy the games. Gambling aside, fantasy aside, I want you to be invested in the NFL this season. If you don't have a team, it's a great time to pick a team as well. There's so many options, 32 options actually. Who would I say to pick? I'd say the New England Patriots, so you can join them and watch them with me at 3 a.m. Melbourne time every single weekend. But until then, until the NFL season starts on Monday morning, I will see you on Friday afternoon to preview a huge AFL final, to talk a few betting selections. I'll also put some out on my socials for the weekend-long multi and potentially a multi for Thursday night footy. But before we get into all that, just enjoy the NFL, enjoy this podcast, and most importantly, thank you. Thank you as always for listening to Slam Talk Sports. It has been an absolute pleasure to be in your ears and in your eyes once again. I'll see you all on Friday afternoon.